Hello, welcome to the Genealogy Merit Badge Clinic. In this video, we're going to review the requirements for the Genealogy Merit Badge. And we're doing this for the Inland Northwest Council's STEM University. Let me start off first of all by saying that the requirements are the requirements. Nothing more is going to be added and nothing less will be accepted. And we also want to remind you that you do not meet with your Merit Badge counselor alone. You always have to have a buddy, or there needs to be some other person present. A parent will do. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Now, in terms of completing the Merit Badge, I would recommend that you download a worksheet. There's both Word and PDF versions available from the internet. You can also just Google the Genealogy Merit Badge worksheet, or you can go to the website which is associated with this workshop. It's available either place, and you can just download it and then fill it in as you go along. And that's important, because if you try to remember what all your answers were and then later on fill in the worksheet, you're going to forget some things. And you should always do the easiest thing possible, which is fill it in as you go along. When you're done, you'll show me your completed worksheet at either the STEM University or at some other time and place that we can meet. And then it's when we will complete the blue card. And there's another video on how to fill out the blue card, and it will be signed by me when you are completed. If you have any questions at any time, send me an email at frank.hutchison@comcast.net, or you can call me on my cell phone with the number that's shown on the screen. Let's now get into what the requirements are. Requirement 1 is that you have to explain to me what the words genealogy, ancestor, and descendant mean. Now, you can use any dictionary, or here's a link to the Merriam-Webster dictionary that's on the internet. Very straightforward. Again, download a worksheet and fill in the definitions, and you'll have that one complete. For requirement 2, you have an option. You can either do a timeline for yourself or for a relative, and then write a short bio or bibliography based on that timeline, or you can keep a journal for 6 weeks. And you must write in the journal at least once a week for each of those 6 weeks. Now, you might be wondering what a timeline is, and we have an example of here. This is the events in the life of Benjamin Franklin, and a timeline simply starts on the left with the beginning, whatever that might be, and it goes until you reach the end. A lot of people, they start with the birth of the individual and they end with the death or the present state of the person, whatever that might be. And then you have the years across the line in the middle, and you have the different events in that person's life linked to when they occurred. Biography is simply a written history of a person's life. Now, when you write a short biography, we're not looking for a book. This should be probably 2 pages, give or take a little bit. You don't have to write a book. And finally, a journal is simply a written or recorded record of a person's daily events, feelings, or impressions. And again, I'll remind you here, this doesn't have to be written. You can record it. There are a lot of people who use the recording on their computer to keep a journal. And you can just talk into it, and you have your journal. Requirement 3. In this requirement, you're going to choose a relative or a family acquaintance that your parents probably will approve of, and you will interview that person. You either interview them face-to-face, by telephone, or by email, or by letter. And what you want to do is you want to record the information that you gather from them. Now, in this modern age, you don't have to necessarily do something in person in order to do it face-to-face. I'll point out to you that Skype and other video conferencing methods are available, and they're very effective. Whatever means you use to communicate and interview, use your worksheet to record the information you collect. That's requirement 3. In requirement 4, you're asked to do the following. Name 3 types of genealogical resources and explain how these resources can help you chart your family tree. We'll talk about genealogical resources in just a moment. The second part is obtain at least one genealogical document that supports an event that is or can be recorded on your pedigree chart or family group record. We'll talk about those a little bit. The document can be found at home or at a government office, religious organization, archive, or library. And last of all, tell how you would evaluate the genealogical information you found in requirement 4B. Now, what do we mean by genealogical resource? It is any way of obtaining information that relates to your family history. Either you, your parents, your grandparents, or some other ancestor. Now, what are examples of genealogical resources? For example, your local government keeps birth records. These are a genealogical resource. They also keep death records. Your newspaper will have archives of old newspapers where they have obituary columns. These are genealogical resources because an obituary will tell you about a person. You also have other sources. And in this day and age, with the internet and a lot of records being online, you can use these resources to find information. For example, you can go to Ancestry.com or other genealogical sites and look up records of either the government, for example, census records or land records, and be able to get information from them about your family. Now, in any one of these, when they say a genealogical document, they're talking about a particular form of information. For example, a genealogical document could be a page from a census record. A census record, for example, a U.S. Census record, it would have a family name, the individuals' names, their ages, and sometimes it has other information about them, like, for example, they'll be male or female, and whether they're the head of the household or they're not. This information is what you can use to fill in your family history, either a pedigree chart or a family group record. Now, a pedigree chart is simply, sometimes it's called a tree chart, and it's simply starts with the first individual, whoever that might be, and for example, be yourself, the next generation, which would be your parents, and then your grandparents, and then your great-grandparents. Generally, there are only 4 or 6 generations that are represented on a sheet, depending on its size. Now, in this day and age, you also have computer programs which will keep track of all this information. In this case, everything's linked together, and you just fill in the information as you go along, and it's going to be recorded, and then you can print it out in any way that you want. And that is perfectly acceptable to use in this merit badge. Now, once you get a document and you find some information about your family in it, you need to examine it and evaluate it. Well, how do you evaluate it? You first of all examine it and ask yourself, how accurate is it? Does it actually relate to my family? Is there information here that I have already or which can be related to information I have? For example, I did some research and I was looking at some census records, and I found what I thought was one of my ancestors, Mary Ida. Well, it turned out that the census record I found had an Ida Mary. Did they just mix up the name? She was about the right age. Well, I did a little bit more research, and I found out that Mary Ida had a cousin who was named Ida May. Now, if I had just taken that information and written it into my family group sheet or pedigree chart, it wouldn't have been accurate. I had to evaluate it to see if the person I was looking at was the one that I was really looking for. And we can talk more about how to evaluate genealogical information when we meet. Requirement 5. You're going to be asked to contact one of the following and ask what genealogical services, records, or activities they provide. And then you report those results on your worksheet, and we'll review that when we meet. Your options are the following, but they are not the only ones that you have. There may be other forms that will be perfectly valid. One is a genealogical or lineage society. For example, I had a friend once who was the president of the excuse me, who was president of a the MacDonald clan, and the MacDonald clan is those who descend from the Clan Donald in Scotland. It's a formal organization here in the United States, and it also allows those who are descendants of MacDonalds to be able to meet together and to exchange information and also get together for social purposes. This is an example of a lineage or a genealogical society. Another genealogical society that I belonged to was the Tidewater Genealogical Society. This is in the Tidewater area of Virginia. This is between Newport News and Williamsburg, Virginia. And for example, one of their projects was recording all the information on headstones in different graveyards in the peninsula. And then they were publishing these in books so that this information would be available to others. You could also have a surname organization. For example, my wife's family had an organization that they put together so that they can combine money from everybody and hire a professional genealogist to do research on their ancestors. That's a surname organization or a family organization. There may be one for your family. There's also genealogical education facilities or institutions. For example, your local Latter-day, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes called the LDS Church, will have a family history center. This is a facility that anyone can go to and use the resources which are available there. They also have staff which are willing to help educate you and help you find information about your family. And it's free to use, although there is a cost for renting materials. And finally, you have a genealogical record repository. Now, what are these? It could be any type of organization that collects records which have a genealogical purpose. For example, we've mentioned before, your local government will collect birth and death information. That is a genealogical record repository. I mentioned before the LDS Church. They also collect genealogical records. They collect them on microfilm and they make them available. That is another genealogical record repository. It's any place that has records that can relate to genealogy and keeps them in one place. That is a genealogical record repository. Governments do it, private industry does it, and even non-government organizations do it. Whichever one you want to, you just have to pick one of these and go there and see what they have available. Now, there's one other category that they have here, which we skipped over, and that's a professional genealogist. Now, this is someone who does genealogy as a profession. They get paid for it. So you have to realize that when you ask them questions, you're taking up time when they could be having someone else pay them. So be careful of their time and just be courteous. But you can ask them what type of genealogy they specialize in, what type of records they use, how they get their information, and what they do with it. In any one of these, again, remember to find out what genealogical services, records, or activities they provide, and then report those results on your worksheet. In requirement 6, you're actually going to get into doing some of your own family history. You're going to be asked to create a family pedigree chart. That's shown here on the right. The first generation, which is on the left, is you. You'll fill in your name, when you were born, what sex you are, male or female. I doubt any of you are married yet, but there's room for that, and also for when you died, because this form can be used for as many generations as you want, and you just link them together. And then just below that, there's a spot to put down your spouse. I don't expect any scouts to have to worry about anything other than their name and their birth date and birthplace. In the next column, you have 2 boxes, and this is for your mother and your father. And again, you put in their information, their names that they had at birth, where they were born, when they were born, when they got married, where they got married, and if they're dead, when they died and where they died. The pedigree chart is sort of the map of like the interstates in the United States. It gives you the broad stroke of how to get from one place to another, but it doesn't get down into the details. And so the third column was going to be your grandparents, and the same type of information is there. And if you use a software program for this, and there's many out there, for example, Personal Ancestral File is generally free, and it's quite simple to use. It's very basic, but it's easy to use, and it's free, as I mentioned before. But there are other programs that you can use, or you can just fill in the form, which is in the Word document, or you can do it by pen or pencil on the PDF worksheet. Fill in all the information you can on these generations. And then if you want to, you can also continue on and do your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents. Now, when you get to the last stage there, you're going to realize that there's not enough room to write down all the information. That's because this form is designed that when you get to the last generation there on the right, you just kind of put down what their name was, and then you put a number on it, and that number is going to correlate to another pedigree chart form where you start over with them on the first column where you were put on this one. If you use a genealogy program, which I strongly urge you to do, it's all done for you, and it's quite easy. Okay, and requirement 7 is sort of an extension of what you did in number 6. Now you're going to be dealing with the family group record. In the family group record, it is exactly what its name implies. It is for a family, a father, a mother, and children. And you're going to be required to do 2 of these family group sheets. In the first one, you're going to be a child. So you put your father at the top, your mother just below there, and then you list your siblings and yourself in the order of birth, filling in all the information that's required on that form that you have. Once you've completed that form, you get another copy of that form, and you take one of your parents and you fill out a family group record for them based on them being a child. So you put your grandfather and your grandmother and then their children, which would be your aunts and uncles. And you fill all that information in as best you can. Again, if you have a genealogy program, it will do this automatically for you. You enter the information and it will generate this form. However you do it is up to you, but you do need to fill in the form to the best of your ability. Requirement 8. Now we're going to talk not necessarily about genealogy, but how technology is helping and affecting genealogy. First one is we want you to explain the effect that computers and the internet are having on the world of genealogy. I'll give you a hint. Genealogy is the number 2 use of the internet. Part B is to explain how photography, including microfilming, has influenced genealogy. Now, if you go to Family History Center at the LDS Church, you're going to discover that one of the things that you can look at is microfilm. And it's played a very important role in genealogy because people have gone out and they have photographed genealogical records that were in danger of being destroyed or lost. And the LDS Church, for example, has teams that go out and do this. And then what they do is they make a copy of the microfilm that they create and give it to the repository where they filmed it. And then they keep copies for themselves, and they make copies that people can borrow. This means that you don't have to go to Edinburgh, Scotland, to look up your family history, if that's where your family's from. You can go to your local Family History Center, and they can get microfilm of the records from Edinburgh, Scotland. And so the information is much more widely available. It also means that it's a lot more compact. But you're going to be able to examine how photography helps. and also the roles that you can use photography in your family history. Requirement 9, and this is the last one. When you've completed everything else, now what you have to do is discuss what you've learned about your family and your family members through your genealogical research. And a bit of advice at this point. It may come as a surprise, but families are made up of humans, and humans are not perfect. In your research, you may come upon things which may be somewhat disturbing or even embarrassing. Just remember that these people are not you. They may have been your ancestors, but they're not you, and so whatever they did is their responsibility. It has no effect upon you, and you don't need to be embarrassed by what your ancestors did. For example, I have an ancestor who history records as taking a red-hot poker and thrusting it into the bowels of another of my ancestors. The one who did the thrusting wanted to be King of England. The one who got thrusted with the red-hot poker died, and he was the King of England. So I've got murderers in my family. Is that embarrassing? Well, that was their business. But it's kind of fun to be able to say, hey, I had a King of England in my ancestors. Actually, I had several. If you go back far enough, you'll find that you have very interesting people. I have had ancestors who have founded towns, who built marvelous businesses, did great works, and I had ancestors who did very bad things, like embezzle from their family members. We all have those. And if you go back far enough, you'll have plenty of them. As my father-in-law used to say, when asked why he didn't do genealogy work, he said he knew enough horse thieves among the living. He didn't need to find any among the dead. But enjoy your family. You'll find that they're both good people and they're bad people, but they're your family. Learn from them and appreciate them. Now, again, this is a recap. For completing the merit badge, get the worksheet or any other way that you want to record the information. Enter your answers as you go through it. When we meet next, show me the completed worksheet and we'll complete the blue card. And there's another video that talks about the blue card. If you have any questions at any time, send me an email. That's the preferred way. Or if you need to talk, there's my cell phone number. I'm Frank Hutchison, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.